Broadcasting across Australia on Dare Media Group radio stations, this is the Sportcat Show, uncovering secret chapters, strange encounters,
and the occasional technical mishap.
That's right, the occasional technical mishap. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the show, Sportcat Show, formerly known as the Paranormal Guys. We got a great show lined up for you tonight. As always, we have two guests. And I'm blessed tonight to have two beautiful young ladies. I want everybody to come over and join the chat and jump in here and let's get some conversation and questions going. Let me bring my co-host out, Jen. Hey, Jen, how are you?
I'm good.
So, unless you have something to say, I want to get right into our guests.
Nope, I'm ready to go.
I'm excited. We've got a great guest lined up tonight. Natasha is, well, she's a celebrity, a star. She's famous. She's met the president. She's performed at Mar-a-Lago. Natasha has got a couple songs that have went #1 in Apple and iTunes and all that. I guess Apple iTunes is the same, isn't it? So yeah. She's you know what? Let me just bring her out. Natasha, welcome. How are you?
I'm good. How are you guys?
Doing pretty good.
Good.
Doing all right. Wednesdays are always stressful because I had to have a day show and then I have to record tomorrow's radio show for the radio station and have tonight. So yeah, it's always.
Whenever I do book signings, I always tell people, they say, "Hey, how you doing?" And I say, "I am vertical and this side of the dirt, so I can't. My standards are pretty low, but I think I'm doing good."
It could be worse. Definitely could be worse.
Absolutely. So you've got quite the resume. Tell us a little bit about yourself, and then of course we're going to play 100 questions with you. So
okay. Well, I was born and raised into a musical family, but I struggled with severe anxiety, so I did not want the spotlight. So God has a very funny sense of humor. I was kind of set in my career, set with my family, with my kids, kind of living and loving life in 2010 when my dad died cleaning guns at a table, dealing with a very dangerous gun. A bullet went out and hit him in the heart. And so life as I knew it ended within 60 seconds. I mean, I went into shock. I tried to hold everybody together and be the strength in my entire family, and I delayed my healing. So on the year mark, I was already in a really bad place. I questioned why, and I didn't get the answer. And so I got very angry at God. And the things that I spoke, the scripture tells us we have the power of life and death in our tongue. And so I spoke anger, and I put myself into a deep depression. 6 months into my depression, my pastor called and asked me to be a music minister. And he kept calling, and he called on a day that it saved my life. I wouldn't be alive today if it wasn't God crossing my path when he did. And I took that position, and it was a music minister for several years. And it was a training ground for what God illuminated this path for me to walk. So I was in contemporary Christian genre since 2013. And I'm working on my 8th album now. I have 4 albums in contemporary Christian. And I have in 2020, we did a Christmas album and then did a patriotic album because we saw all what happened during COVID. Our freedoms were infringed upon here in the United States and elsewhere around the world, especially Australia. And I just wanted to thank the soldiers and the families that sacrificed so much for my freedom, and realizing that our freedom is not free. It should be the last thing that we give up. So I did a patriotic album, did a pro-life song. Little did I know that album would be the thing that kind of propelled me out of contemporary Christian. I did a pro-life song. I was considered too pro-life for a Christian industry, believe it or not. And I was
Totally.
boycotted. I was boycotted off of radio. Anytime you stand up for conservative values, the industry is just very progressive there in Nashville, and I was boycotted. So we, my husband told me he'd been wanting me to do a Trump One song since the 2020 election, and this was 2022 by then. And I said, I'm not going to have a career to go back to in Nashville if I do a Trump song. They hate President Trump. And so he said, do you want to stand up for a genre that doesn't stand up for life? And I said, wow. I immediately pivoted and said, let's do Trump One. So that was the beginning song of what now is going into my second album of culture, controversial things we're not allowed to talk about. I give a theme song to sing about. And that's kind of, in a very short amount of time, my entire career so far.
Wow. Well, they say that we're not given more than we can bear. And,
people would repeat that to me all the time. And I'd get so angry in the midst of depression because I was like, this is too much for me to bear. What do you mean God doesn't give you? The scripture doesn't say that. When you really analyze the teachings, it tells you you're going to have things in life that are too much for you to bear, that the weight gets heavy, but we're supposed to give it to him so that he carries the load. And that was something, as a control freak, as a business owner, as a mama of boys, that I was very hard. I couldn't give it to God. I would give it to him and I'd take it right back. And I really thought I had it under control. I really didn't realize how bad into depression I was because I thought I had it under control.
It's hard to see when you're in the midst of that. It's a
Yes.
lot of 2020 looking back and seeing, wow, I made it through that.
I know. And every album in my Christian, if I were to tell you my entire story, and you just tell me what we have time for, but you would be blown away at how God illuminated a path for someone that had such anxiety to know when to step out, right? And I look back on it and had no idea, you think you make it through something. And we created our first album called I Made It Through. It really was an entire album of songs making it through a trial from beginning to end, and just hitting different topics and different feelings and emotions that I felt in the midst of that. But every album was another chapter of my recovery, from making it through to rising above, which is different. It's a difference between truly surviving and then thriving in life and thriving in Christ, and then being a warrior and then standing on a firm foundation. So each chapter of recovery was another album, and it was really cool how I look back on the journey and how God really used me through that.
So when you're writing, so these is part of your life, all of these, did that make you feel was it terrifying to put your music out there, knowing that people are seeing your life?
Of course, yeah, it's terrifying to be put under a microscope, to be picked apart. You put your heart and soul into the lyrics. You've lived these lyrics. And you're going to get some negativity. You're going to get some things that scare you and disappoint you. And everybody's got an opinion, right? A keyboard warrior these days.
Yeah.
But the positive is so much worth the negative. I mean, when you're standing there and someone is looking at you and telling you, you are the reason, your music is the reason why I'm standing here today alive. Your music is the reason why I've helped others. And it being out on the road, putting yourself into these songs and being on the front lines of what I call ministry was the hardest years of my life. And I was worried about helping others, but my own family being sacrificed, right? And being neglected because I can't quite be superwoman and do it all. So I was really conscious of that. I didn't want my family to hurt because of it. But in those moments, when people would tell me these things and say, I was planning on committing suicide tonight, and I heard your testimony and it saved my life. I gave my life to Christ. And I would sit back with tears and say, this is the reason why I do what I'm doing. The sacrifice is worth it.
I call it writer's fuel, but it's really artist fuel, isn't it?
Yeah, it sure is. when you feel so empty that you don't have anything else to give, God heals you and fills you up really quickly with just different comments like that.
Yeah.
So, as a writer, you strip yourself bare a little bit. You open up to show people exactly what's behind that rough exterior, and that makes you very vulnerable. It makes me very vulnerable. But I do more. It's more good than bad happens from it, and so it makes it worth it.
Yeah. And it sounds like your music is not just healing to other people. It was also like a way for you to heal for yourself.
It was, God has a really cool system in place. And I think really, if you use the examples of pastors, one of the things that my pastor said to me the third or fourth time that he called me, he said, God wants me to tell you these things, and he just wants you to shut up and listen, because I just wasn't listening to him. Southern woman with lots of words. And he said, I see you on a stage every single week, and there's a flow that God is giving you that's going through you and coming out. And in return for your obedience of doing this for God, he's going to heal you in return. As you sing, God's going to give you healing. And my first response was, I have nothing to give. I can't get out of bed every day. I'm a terrible mom right now. I'm a terrible wife, terrible daughter. I'm just trying to survive. And I don't have anything. And he says, God will give you that. He will give you that. And it was almost from the very first time it happened, very first time of standing on that stage and fully connecting to God and being a conduit from God to the people in the pew. It was kind of an addictive feeling, because it was for the first time since I lost my dad that I actually felt that peace and that joy. And I craved that. And the same thing is happening whether I'm on a stage singing the Star Spangled Banner, or I'm on a stage singing a culture and political controversial song, or if I'm singing a praise and worship song or one of my Christian songs. Doesn't matter. I'm still connecting in such a way. And my prayer before I hit any stage is that I want people to hear and feel God and not necessarily hear me. That's how I know I've done my job. If someone comes to me and said, I felt the presence of God, or the hair stood up on my arms, what was that? And I'm like, you felt God. Then I know that every note may not be perfect, but they felt him, and that therefore I did what I was supposed to do.
Do you get nervous now at all still, or?
Yes, I do. I look back to whenever I started in 2013, and 30 minutes before a show was the hardest part for me. I overthought everything. I about would have a panic attack. And if something happened with the sound, my in-ears didn't work, I couldn't hear my track, anything happens. And still today, I get a little wound up about that, right? But the Natasha of 2013 would never be able to stand on stages in front of world leaders, presidents. God has gotten me so much further. Now, do I struggle with anxiety? I absolutely do. But I've learned to just say, okay, God, I've prepared. I've done what I'm supposed to do. I've done all I know to do. I have taken care of my voice. I have warmed up. I know my words. Wherever I fall in weakness, you've got to make up the rest. And once I really learned to really believe that and rest in that, I don't hyperventilate anymore. I'm not on the floor with a paper bag trying to get air, I've come a long way. I've learned that God never calls the people who are fully equipped, but he equips us as we walk this journey with him. And he just makes us better and better if we allow him to. And so anyway, but who knows? Next week, I could be on the floor having a panic attack because the microphone doesn't work or something. I don't know, but I'm trying and I'm much better.
And don't blame me, please. That's why the show opening, it says, and there's always technical difficulties,
because there's been a few.
Always.
And I get panicky like you. So yeah, I get that. I'm a perfectionist. I want everything perfect.
I was just about to say that. I'm such a perfectionist. My husband calls it, like OCD. And I'm like, it's just perfectionism. It's not OCD. But he says I have a case of CDO because that's alphabetical order and that's worse, he thinks. So
I love it. Yeah. Well, I always tell my kids, it's like, you can't control anything else in the world. All you can control is your reaction to it.
My dad used to
And I
say
mean,
that.
yeah,
My
it comes
dad.
down to that.
Mhm.
You just kind of at some point have to say, you know what? I've done my part. If something goes wrong, I have done everything I can.
That's right. That's right. And sometimes you have to go to plan B. So,
Yeah.
you know, when you do it enough, you're more comfortable with that plan B,
Yeah.
you know,
And you
like
can
you're on
always
a,
laugh at it too, right? You're like, well, I guess this wasn't planned today.
yeah, well, God help me. Is usually what I say.
It happens. It happens. Um, Now, let me ask you a question. I was a paramedic firefighter, and like you, I believe that there's a calling. And I sometimes sit back and wonder, how did a rural country boy end up being traveling around the world on a Learjet, treating high-profile patients, extremely sick people, extremely wealthy people, athletes, celebrities, blah 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 blah. And I was just a boy on a box in a country town. And do you ever sit back yourself and say that same kind of with blinders on?
Oh my God, all the time. When I and my husband he'll tap me sometimes. We'll be sitting in a place and he'll say, "Can you believe that we're here? Can you believe that? Would you have ever, in your wildest imagination, think that you would be singing for the president of Argentina or invited to a inauguration of the president of El Salvador because he's a fan of your music?" Um, Never would I have thought that. And I think that that's a good gauge that we're still humble. You know, things still take our breath away and we can make plans of our own, but God has bigger dreams than we could ever imagine. And it's in those moments that I just look at my husband and say, I thank God for the incredible blessings and mercy. And I'm not worthy to be standing where I'm standing, but I sure do honor it and I appreciate it.
Very powerful.
Yes.
Um, so do you hear, I don't want this to sound, not like a mental thing, but do you hear the spirit, the voice, something in your inside of you resonating out sometimes?
Yeah, so it's funny how sometimes I feel that God communicates with me, you know, when you walk with him. I'm not a baby in Christ anymore. I was born seventh generation into United Pentecostal. I've got a huge foundation, but I wasn't anchored until I went through this trial of my life with my dad. um, God's taught me a whole lot, and you have to really tune things out and really understand the voice of God, right? When you hear it, and I think it's different for everybody else. The God talks to me. I'm very sassy and I'm very mischievous, and I live with a husband that is mischievous and loves shock and awe, and so it's just a lot of fun and laughing and sass around my house. And it's funny how when God really wants to get my attention, it's a sassy voice. It's thoughts that come through my head that I know that those are not my thoughts. It's God, but he's talking to me so sassy. Why is he talking to me like this, you know? And it
Because that's
makes me
what you connect
laugh.
with.
It makes me laugh and pay attention to it more. And so I think he knows that. So yes, I do. I will pass by, you know, I pray every morning because even though I am in this controversial political world right now, I everything ties back to God with me. And I bring God everywhere I go. And so I pray every morning, let me cross paths with somebody that needs something from me. And let me be sensitive enough to slow down when I need to pay attention to that. And I will walk past somebody and it will be like a hit in the gut. And I'll have a thought like that person needs you to tell them that, or that person needs money, or that person just needs you to go tell them that God loves them. And I'm starting to really understand. I mean, God has to hit me pretty hard. I go really fast during the day. You know, I'm 90 miles an hour and I'm multitasking. So God it's like a punch in the gut. But it's so cool when it happens because I know it was God and I know I have to do it right then. And the things that I've told people, you know, that there's just stuff that come to my mind. Like, I just feel like you need to know that God will never leave you, you know? And I don't know why I'm saying that to the person. And then they break out in tears and they say, "Oh my God, I prayed to God that somebody would show me that they cared and that God hasn't left me today. And so I'm like, thank you for making me understand when to stop and when to turn and what to say. And so in my older years, I've been more sensitive to that little nagging voice that you can very easily say, oh, it's just my imagination or my thoughts. But I've fine-tuned it to really understand that I really do believe that most of the time I hear it and I follow through. I think sometimes I get so busy, I tune things out more, but I try.
You
Well,
say
I mean-
sassy, he's got to have a sense of humor too. So I just wanted to interject.
He made my husband. He definitely has a sense of humor.
He has to. That's okay. Go ahead, Jen. I just wanted to interject that. He's got to have
No,
a sense
that's okay. That's okay. I was going to say something along those lines too.
But it's true. So.
It is.
Well, now do you play instruments as well? I'm sorry, I cut you off again, Jen. Sorry.
No, that's
So
okay.
I do I play? No, technically I don't. Not enough to really. So I was raised a tomboy. My dad always wanted a boy. I was not. I rejected anything that was girly growing up because I bonded with my dad. He was a fisherman. He was a hunter. I wanted G.I. Joes. Never did I want Barbie dolls or baby dolls. I became more feminine through my teenage years. And now I have a really good combination of girly, but tough and strong. But my mom, she never could understand that. She really couldn't. She didn't understand why I didn't want pretty princess and all of that. And so I'm rambling. I forgot your question. What was your question? Your question was
I'm going to intervene with another question. How many boys do you have? You said you have sons?
I have 2 boys, 25 and 23.
No
Okay.
way.
And now, because
Yeah.
this is sounding very scary, how many siblings do you have, if you don't mind me asking?
I have one younger sister. She's 8 years younger, and they pastor a church in Arkansas, and I'm in Texas.
Okay. I was going to say, because, like, I'm a mom of boys, and a lot of the things you're saying, I was like, wow, it sounds like me, except I have 4 younger brothers. So
Oh, yes.
I have 2 boys. I have a 9 and 11-year-old. So I know it
Amazing.
can be very busy.
I wish mine were that young again. I am not liking this stage in life right now. I will once I get grandkids at some point. But
Then you get to start again.
Which was for.
yes. So do you remember what your question? I was going on this.
I saw the piano in the background and
do I play instruments? So my mom wanted me to play the piano so bad. My grandmother, my sister, everybody played by ear at like 3 years old. And I didn't want to stay inside at the piano. And so I fought her so much. I learned the basics, but I fought her so much that she finally just gave up and said, fine, go outside and hunt. I could care less if you played the piano. And so I wished I hadn't fought her because at some point I want to slow down enough to learn how to really play. I can hear by ear. So when I was that music minister, I had to label. It was so hard for me. I was not equipped to be that. I had to label the piano with stickers of what the notes were. And I would pick out the different parts and I would have to write them out. And then the keyboard player at practice would play those for me to help teach. I would had such anxiety, I would forget the notes that I was trying to teach. So I had to write them out ahead of time. So I can hear by ear. I know when something's off. I know when it's the right key. But for sitting down and just really enjoying playing, I haven't been able to do that yet. But I will. I'm going to pick up piano at some point, whether I teach myself or not.
Yeah. I mean, again, that sounds just like me. We are like twins removed because I just started learning piano 2 years ago.
Oh, amazing.
And I wanted to learn it when I was a kid, and I play a lot by ear. I don't know my note names. I know where they are on the keyboard. That's it. Yeah.
To me, anybody can be taught how to play by note and by, number system and so forth. But it's really embedded in you. That's where the true talent is. If you can hear by ear, I've seen it too many times. My grandmother was unbelievable, and she didn't know how to read notes. She just did it all by ear.
I learned something new about Jen every week.
Us women are complicated. We have many layers.
Yes, you are.
You just got to ask the right questions, Glenn.
Exactly.
I
And
play the
so,
harmonica. That's it for me. So
I was going to ask, so what is your influence for all of your songs? So your first 4 albums, did the influence change for the second? Like who influenced you in the music industry? I like Adele, that kind of thing.
oh yeah. So I'm an 80s rock kid. So I love the rock hair bands, and it's funny with the Christian music, especially once you got to the Warrior album, especially. I got a little bit more flexibility to do a lot more of what I wanted to do. You will hear 80s rock infused in
Love it.
every one of my songs. I had Christian mentors too, but the way my story went, it like God showed me a little bit more of the road. Once you finish with one album, you have to really start the next one. And when you think you're finished with your mission, God opens up an entire a different mission. And so I'm a CEO. I'm very a personality, not like most musicians. So I actually create like org charts. You know what an org chart is? And in the center of the org chart is the center topic of the entire album. And then at least it was with the Christian ones. Now I'm all over the place. But each little box had a different thing that I wanted to talk about. And that's how we wrote and created an album. In Nashville, they've never seen anyone with an org chart. So I was first. But
So you said your most recent albums, you don't use that org chart?
Not so much anymore. You have to understand, I'm in a very controversial lane in a culture war. Trying to make a little bit of difference in music and culture, because music is powerful. And when you give our movement a theme song of, you've got a situation that's just, you're frustrated. It's a horrible situation that's happening in politics or happening in our world or country. For instance, one of my latest songs is called The Somali Waltz. We chased the headline of the Minnesota fraud, and people are so frustrated and so mad about our tax dollars being stolen. So we decided to give them a theme song in a very lighthearted way, kind of making fun of it, but gave them a little bit of closure, and people love that. So it's an album that has all the same themes of patriotic, or at least the last one was. This one is more controversial topics. It's just, but they all kind of, I call them truth bombs. They have a lot of truth in them, and they give a voice back and an anthem back to the people. And I just did one that went against Bruce Springsteen, because people were so upset at Bruce Springsteen in the song that he just wrote a couple months ago. And so we wrote one called The Boss. And so it's I don't know, we're dealing with heavy topics in a fun way, and people are loving it. So they all have cohesion, but they're not specifically driven like we did our Christian albums, if that makes sense.
I love
that Finland rock station. I do not play The Boss. I see that come up in my line set up, replace any.
I was going to say, I love how you call them theme songs. What would you call your theme song? Like, what song is yours, represents you?
My goodness. When I look at representing me, I would look at each title track from all of my 4 Christian albums. I survived by making it through a trial. I rose above by, through truly thriving in Christ by rising above. And then I was a true warrior. So warrior is a big time theme song of mine, because I felt like I had made it through something, and I have learned, and now I was strong enough to help others along the same path, and be a protector and kind of move the path out from them, and they can follow me. And then Stand was another theme song of mine, from our 4th album, of truly standing in Christ and being a light in the midst of the darkness. So I kind of claim all 4 of those. People always ask me, what's your favorite song that you've done? And I'm like, they're like my kids. I like them all for
Oh,
different reasons.
I say the same thing about my books. Like people ask me, it's like, oh, which
Yeah.
book is your favorite? It's like, those are
No,
like choosing between my children.
yeah,
I love
can't
them
do
for
it.
different reasons. Yeah,
I know.
I totally empathize.
Yeah.
All right, I got a question from the chat here. Chris says, I have to ask, being a huge 80s metal fan myself, Natasha's favorite band.
Oh my goodness.
That's a
I've
good
got
question.
several. The top 3 that I keep going back for, well, top 4. Geez. I loved Bon Jovi. Bon Jovi was one of my favorites. Journey was one of my favorites.
Ooh,
White
good choice.
Snake was one of my favorites. I loved Is This Love by White Snake. And Guns N' Roses. I love Guns N' Roses.
Mhm. Good choices. I like it.
Yeah.
I like it. I like all of them. I play all of them on my station. My favorite is Supertramp. I know that everybody's like, that's weird.
Nah,
Breakfast
it's not
in
weird.
America.
80s songs
That
were
is-
weird. They
that
had
is
a
my
lot of,
theme.
especially early 80s. My husband was in early 80s, and I'm like, good Lord, come on, Eileen, and some of these other ones that are so, I like them and I sing along with them, but I'm like, they're a little strange.
I played Bow Wow Wow. And when I said that in the air, I was like, did I just
I know
say that?
I know some of the later 80s, but I'm more of a 90s girl myself.
Oh, 90s. Jeez.
Yeah. That's like a whole nother universe.
It really is. And 80s it's legendary for a reason. I mean, there's some good things in the 90s, but I can't point to a whole lot in the 80s that wasn't good.
Yeah. But you know what? I'm weird too because I do
Disco.
like my Johnny Cash.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Hey, who
I
doesn't
like
Johnny?
old country.
Yeah.
I said disco, but I think that was going out in the early 80s. So maybe it
Yeah, it
wasn't.
was.
Yeah, that was heading out.
Yeah. That was a bad time for music.
79, 80, and a little bit of 81 got a little iffy.
Yes. So let me ask you a question about the political stuff. What drew you to that? Was it the fact that it was something you felt inside, you wanted to make a statement, or you were like, dang it, somebody needs to say this?
Kind of a little bit of all that. So my husband was the strong one. I knew that I would be ostracized. I knew that anybody coming along with me would be completely cast out of Nashville, which they were. So I, like my team, I went to my producer and my guy that co-writes and sometimes writes the full songs. I told him, I said, I'd love for you to go on this journey with me. Trump one was the first one that we were going to do, but it has to be your decision because this is going to ruin your career, right? Unfortunately, there's no tolerance when it comes to conservative politics in the Nashville industry. A little bit on country, but a whole lot in contemporary Christian. And so my husband had been saying since 2020, we need to do a Trump one song. We need to put a little bit of truth out there. They won't let people talk about it. They won't let us post anything about it. So that's exactly what we need to sing about. And I just didn't have the courage to do it in 2020, 2021. 2022 is where I got to the place where I started being boycotted. And my husband just said the right thing, like I said earlier to me. And I said, you know what? It's time somebody tells the truth. And so it's time that this, it may just be my opinion at this point, but watch it. It's going to be proved right. And it is. It's coming out as we speak. So we threw that out there. And I was the very first one to veer into this lane of controversial topics. As the first one to really get paid attention to, right? And President Trump, of course, gravitated to this particular topic. And it was about him. And so he kept sharing it. And so it's really cool. Once he got back in, there wasn't a lot of people that had courage with it until he got back into office. Now there's more people standing up, and it's nice because you're not out there all by yourself. But I never thought when I started on this journey that I would create any type of music that would get me death threats, bomb threats, witches casting spells. It is a spiritual warfare. I cannot tell you what we've been through since 2022, 2023. But it's been a whole different world, and it's been worth it, but it's been tough. And we get suppression, tech suppression. I'm not allowed to advertise my music. I'm not allowed to buy my way to the top like all these record labels are. I can't even boost my post on Facebook or iTunes. They call them glitches, but it's nothing but discrimination. So when my songs get to number one, and we've had six number ones hit number one on all of iTunes and Billboard, which is globally, which is huge. When that happens, just know that it's people buying it. It's us getting around the system that is rigged against us, and it's really cool when it does happen.
I like that. Let's catch a couple things in the chat here. CB says, I listen to a lot of 70s, 80s, and 90s. How do you feel about classical?
I'm not a big classical fan. Now, there are some, one of my favorite movies in the 80s, it was early 80s, was called Somewhere in Time. And if you look up, I don't even know the name of the classical song, but it's a couple of the theme songs from that movie that I will stop in my tracks when I hear it. I love that classical song so much. So there's a few, I can't say that I don't listen to classical because I love a few. So not even enough to know what the songs are, but when I hear it, I can sing it. I know it. So I'm not a big classical fan, but there is a few that has made an impression in my life that I will never forget, and I will always recognize when they come on.
They're always pretty to play on piano too.
Oh, they're
I was going to say, are you ever to the point where, hold on, you're listening to something and you're like, no, wait, I want to hear something different, and you'll switch like total genres.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. You can hear, and just for an example, the new music that I'm putting out, every song's from a different genre. I love country. I love rock. I love alternative. There's something in every single genre that I love. And I have a son, my oldest son is like that too. When you look at our playlist, you would think that we have a personality disorder. Multiple personalities are like, oh my God, from this to that. But I don't know. I love music. Anything that's cool and different always catches my attention.
Absolutely. Chris says, Natasha, I was actually interviewed by MTV when I went to see the very first headlining tour of Guns N' Roses in East Troy, Wisconsin with Skip Row. Great band choices.
Yay, thank you.
Chat too. Yeah,
legends.
I'm like you.
Poison's another one. I loved Poison too.
Oh yeah, that's a good one. So
all the things as a United Pentecostal teenager I wasn't allowed to listen to, I listened to it.
I never thought of that. That's absolutely correct.
I know. Rebel.
Yeah. It's like the heart of the more I tell, like the more you're told, don't listen to that, don't listen to it, the more you want to, right?
Yes, that's exactly right. And I may have not known half the lyrics of what I was saying, but I loved them.
Yeah. Well, there's so many songs that I listen to and I love the beat and I love the tune. And then I now listen to the lyrics and I'm like, that is not a good song. But I was listening to that when I was a young teen, It's so
I know. And repeating the lyrics too. And you're like,
singing them out, not knowing what I'm singing.
That was really bad. I mean, that happened to us always with the 80s songs because a lot of them were from Europe and the UK and they sang with an accent anyway. And so, I love there's a commercial that used to come on and the guys were walking out of the house and they were singing Rock the Cat Box. And it was Rock the Cat Cash Bar or whatever, which was a bar back then. And it's so funny how I have been guilty of that same thing. Even today, I hear an 80s song and I just go on repeat and I'm like, what did I just say? Because now I understand it a little bit more. I did that just today.
I remember being a teeny bopper and I had one of these little, the little radio with the cassette tape because that's how old I am. And I would actually
I grew up with 8 tracks. I'm older.
Well, I had those. I remember listening to records, like old records. And I would listen to a line and then I'd pause it and write down what I thought and listen to it again, listen again. And because not all of the cassette tapes that I had the lyrics in it. So I would write down, try to make my own. But there were some times where I was like, I don't know what they said. I'll just, make up my
know.
own thing that maybe makes sense, but it just, yeah.
Oh, yes, we all have versions of 80s songs that we
Yeah.
still probably are not singing them correctly.
Oh, yeah. Excuse me, did I kiss this guy? Wait a minute, that's the 70s, but yeah. Still don't know the answer to that.
Yeah.
CB says versatile musician. Nice. And Chris comes back and says, I was in college and highly intoxicated, so it didn't make much sense. It never aired. It was the first show of the whole tour, so I indulged way too much. Usually on your first rock and roll concert you do. So
Yes. But probably one even, you may have been drunk, but I guarantee you'll never forget that night.
yeah.
I was going to ask that when you're writing songs in your, all of your songs before you switched from strictly Christian to more political, are you writing your songs or singing your songs as a musician, more of a storyteller, or later albums as more of an activist?
I think I'm more of a storyteller. I mean, there's some activism in some of it just because I get so fed up that I'm like, somebody needs to say this, And I guess you would call that an activist. But, some things are storytelling. If I'm chasing a headline, I'm more punching at it, more stabbing at it. And I guess that's probably more activist. But sometimes I just want to paint a picture of a story of, like we did a song called That America, and it painted a picture of what America would be like if we moved away from our foundation and gave up our freedoms. It was kind of in the future of someone, a little girl saying, Mama, tell me what it was like to live in freedom. Tell me what it was like to be able to go to church. And so I think that storytelling, with a little bit of a warning and a little bit of activism. I guess it's all mingled into multiple things into each song.
It's funny you said that. One of our chat said, CB said, have you ever tried storytelling through singing like Johnny Cash?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
He read my question. CB read my questions.
He must have.
In contemporary Christian, you didn't get to tell a whole lot of stories. That was more Southern gospel, more country. So I've got a country song out there, and I kind of like it. I like telling a story in a song. It was something that was new to me.
That's what I noticed about a lot of country songs is, I mean, there's probably others too, but I do notice that a lot of the country songs when I was growing up, they were stories.
Yeah, that's what country's known for. And Southern gospel, which is the country side of gospel, that's what they're known for as well. Tell a story, paint a picture that a person can see vividly when you sing a song. I think it's powerful. Now, about any song can do that, because if I put out a song, I'm going to put out a music video, and it brings that visual counterpart to it, whether it's a story song or not. It ends up being that way because you're seeing that visual component.
Do you, so I know that I encounter this with reading a book and then watching a movie made off of the book. Is it similar you hear the music and you think something in your head, but then when you see a music video, it kind of changes it for you?
To me, it doesn't really change it. It brings those lyrics to life. So it doesn't change my mind because I'm understanding whether I'm singing it or I'm hearing someone else's song. I'm understanding what they're trying to say. But when you put a visual component, I don't know if it's this way for other people, it just causes everything to come out to life. It brings it all together. So I may hear a lyric and it just may not completely click. But when I see the visual component, it may actually cause me to cry, because I'm visually seeing it. So I don't know if other people are like that, but I don't know if that makes me a visual person, maybe.
Well, we all learn like differently. So, there's some people just learn strictly auditory, but then I guess if you're blending, a visual and an auditory together, then it gives it a little bit more punch.
It does. To me, it just brings it to another level and causes it to come to life. So, before it wasn't as important to me with the visual, I guess. I mean, I did a lot of music videos in contemporary Christian, but they were more singing with the band. I didn't really do the story playing. These political and social topics, whether we're using AI to create it or we're using actual video, it makes the lyrics pop. And so it's funny how I've changed. I used to, my sister, my mom, my family around me, I always gave people previews once I got the song done, once I got it back from mixing, then once I got it back from mastering, I wanted them to hear it immediately.
Yes.
Now I completely wait until I get the visual video back to me, because I just feel like this song is good, but this song is great with the video. And I want them to have that first impression, the best it can be now. So now I'm waiting, which is very odd for me. Normally I can't, it's hot on my hands until I get it out,
And does your family give you any problems about listening to your music? Because I know with my husband, I had to threaten him with bodily harm to read my books.
My kids, here, I'm so excited. My husband is so excited because it's like your baby. You have the thought, you do research, you put it down to paper, you create the song, and you see all the different stages, and you're just so ready for the people that you love so dear in your life to hear this and go as crazy about it as what you're going. And my boys are just to the age where they're like, mom, whatever. And, that's cool. And I'm like, I can't get any emotion out of them. And I'm like, I just want to shake them and say, tell me this is the coolest thing you've ever heard and seen. I want to hear that right now.
Feel what I feel.
Yes. Yeah.
Thank you
Feel
for
it
rolling
as
with it.
deeply.
Yeah.
But I don't
Yeah.
get that much emotion out of anybody else, and I tend the people in my life that do freak out, it tends to be the ones that I show the first now to. I want the first opinions to be screaming and over the top. Oh my God, this is the best thing you've ever done.
I know I had the conversation with my husband that if I was a painter or a sculptor, you could just take a glance at the artwork. And but for music and writing, it takes a little longer to appreciate it, doesn't it?
It does. And sometimes, I'm a little quick to get something out there. Maybe society hasn't quite experienced it yet. For instance, I did a Trump song a year and a half ago or so, and it was 3 weeks before the assassination attempt on his life in Butler. And I was a little too quick, and my topic got so controversial that even the Republican side kind of backed away from me because I was too controversial at the moment. But give it 3 weeks later, and suddenly everybody was using my song as an example. And so, sometimes people don't appreciate it right when it happens, but then it lives in history, afterwards.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of things like I know the Willy Wonka movie when it came out, no, it didn't get any good reviews. People didn't like it, but then decades later, I love it. It was a childhood film, and
Right.
I'm showing it to my kids, and they're like, "Mom, this is lame." So it's kind of going back down the other way.
Well, you see some of these legends, Elvis was such a big hit whenever he was alive, but I think he got more popular after his death.
Yeah.
I mean, you look back on it, and I don't think he was to the level that he is now. You know
Yeah.
what I'm saying?
Okay.
So anyway,
Jim Morrison, same way.
Yeah.
Same way. And
Yeah.
there's Skrillex actually clips a piece of him in one of his songs. If you know who Skrillex is, he does EDM, dance music type stuff.
Okay.
He clips when they were interviewing Jim, and he said one day they'll be using, I can envision them using some type of computer or mixer or something. And it was like he predicted he was before his time. So, yeah. And the same with Elvis.
Was.
Yeah.
Before his time.
Let me,
Yeah.
I want to get some of these chats out here real quick. CB says, sounds like you have a lot of soul in your music. Chris says, George Strait is a good story.
Yep.
He's a great storyteller in his
Absolutely.
music. And then CB, he's got a couple questions here, so we'll get them all in real quick. Have you ever or do you perform at music clubs? And what genre do you write in? Oh, I'm sorry. That's for Jen. We can get to,
That's
we can
for
get to
me.
Jen later. Sorry. We'll get to Jen later.
Okay.
We love Jen, but we'll get to Jen in a minute.
No, I've never performed in a music club. Nope.
You'd probably be nervous there. Because they're small, they're cramped in, and everybody's like right there.
I don't know. I think it'd be more. It would be. You'd be able
more
to
intimate.
connect with your. Yeah.
I would like that. I really would.
Yeah.
And, well, I take that back. I mean, I've had a few shows right in the beginning in like New York that were in these small places that probably would be considered a club.
Okay.
Yeah, kind of dark feeling, you know. Yeah, I love that. I love that. I love to be able to see everybody's face that you know, you get into these bigger crowds and you just kind of have to scan the top of their heads, you know. I don't like
they're
that
just a
so much.
blur.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's the biggest crowd you performed in front of, or do you know?
Geez, in person, let's see, 53,000 veterans I opened for Toby Keith at a Daytona event.
Awesome.
Let's see, a couple stadiums that probably rivaled that between 50 and 100,000. I've been on shows that televised to, you know, hundreds of millions of people.
Wow.
So yeah, no nerves there. One particular group that I sing for, more people watch it than the Grammys, Oscars, or Super Bowl combined. And when you think about that, boy, that sends your nerves into overdrive.
It does. Yeah.
It's best not to think about it. I mean, the most I've done is 35th graders. I gave a presentation for.
You know what? I would rather sing to 50,000 people or hundreds of millions on TV than a room full of people that I know. That sends me more into orbit, and I don't know why. I guess because I feel like their expectations are so much higher, and if I mess up, they're never going to let me live it down, you know, type thing.
Or because they know everything about you, whereas strangers don't know everything about you. So they're not judging you based on what they know about you.
Yep. I'm more of an open book.
Good point. CB says, usually music clubs look like jazz bars, but have different genres. See, I'm picturing, I guess, the old country and western, the cigarette smoke, you know, all that little crowd. I'd rather look. I don't know these people. I don't want the person in front of me to throw a beer bottle and hit me.
I love an intimate setting like that. I really do. I think
I would.
But for people that I don't know.
Yeah. Before we let you get out of here, and we always almost run out of time, but I wanted to ask you this specifically. We have a lot of people that believe in Bigfoot. They believe in Dogman, UFO, ghosts. Have you ever had any type of paranormal or cryptid experience? And what are your thoughts on those things?
Yeah. So I was raised United Pentecostal. And so I've seen a lot of demonic type as a kid, that stuff that scared me to death. I saw a 7-year-old that was possessed by a demon that actually had the demon cast out of her at 7 years old. That'll give you nightmares at night. You know, we live in a big world and we have a big God. And so the older that I get, the more I realize that there is more out there that I don't know about, that I haven't seen. So I always leave my mind open to anything is possible, right? I haven't seen it. So yeah, so that doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. It just means that I haven't seen it. God, I've never really seen him, but I felt him and I know he's real. But I've had some paranormal stuff happen. I went to Ireland a year and a half ago, and we had stayed in this house. It was like a 10,000 square foot house on this golf course, and it wasn't an old house, but it looked old, you know. And our friends were not arriving for a couple of days, so it was just me and my husband in this big, massive house, and it was creepy. They had made the third floor the master bedroom, and it was part of the attic, right? That they had turned in this master bedroom. So that was kind of freaky anyway, right? It just made your hackles get up. But I had something happen to me at that house that it's a haunted house. I'm completely, it was a nice ghost, but it was completely haunted. We went to breakfast that next morning. We went down to make breakfast, and normally my phone is attached to me. And I had it in the bed with me, and I got to the door and I thought, oh, I don't have my phone. And then I thought, it's in the middle of the night back home. Nobody's awake. So I started to leave it. And then I turned and thought, I may need to look to catch up on my emails and things. And I said, nope, it's breakfast. Nobody's awake. I'm just going to leave it. So I had two conscious decisions of turning back, seeing that phone on that bed, and deciding to leave it. My husband was already downstairs. We went downstairs. We made breakfast. We ate. We cleaned up breakfast. We used the entire corner of the island. I'm going somewhere with this. Entire corner of the island. And so we cleaned everything up, put everything back in the refrigerator and dishes in the dishwasher and all that. And when I turned to sit down, my phone was in the middle of that island, exactly where we had been chopping up fruit and making bread. And I froze. And my husband said, I thought you said you didn't bring down your phone. And I said, I did not bring down my phone. Neither one of us had been back up. He wasn't playing a joke on me. So from that point on, the entire week, every time I had to go to the bathroom at 3:00 in the morning, my husband was getting up and I was dragging him right there with me. And he's like, oh my God. And I'm like, this place is haunted, you know? And it just, I don't know. Once you get it in your head, then you start hearing and seeing everything, right? But my husband said, well, don't be scared. He was a nice ghost. He brought down your phone. But to this day, neither one of us can explain what happened.
I've heard that from other people. And
Yeah.
was there anything important on the phone, like a message that you needed, or
Absolutely not. Like, it would have been really cool for, you know, it to pop up and say, hey, look behind you or something, right? But
Some hidden picture
it
in
was
your
just my
gallery.
phone with
Picture of
my
you in the
work and
mirror.
things. Yeah, things I needed to do. But it's freaky when you know without a shadow of a doubt that you didn't climb three things of stairs, and neither did your husband. And it wasn't there 5 minutes ago when you were cleaning up, you know? So anyway.
Well, you know, we're gonna have to have you back because
Yeah.
I would love that.
I think we could keep you for hours. Couple things I want to make sure you tell everybody, especially you will be in Nashville to be RFN. Tell all of the fans where they can find you, get your stuff, especially Australia. And I want you to promise me you will have your agent or whomever get in touch with my radio station. We all volunteer disc jockeys for veterans, firefighters, paramedics. It's called a Thin
I
Line
love
Rock
that.
Station.
Yeah.
Your music needs to be on there because we get people who are at the end of their rope and they're just looking for something. I've had people message me for a stupid show I did making jokes, and they were like, you kept me through the night. And I'm like, well, it was still jokes,
Yeah.
but it's the
It's
same thing.
amazing. They didn't feel alone, right?
Yeah,
Some people
yeah.
just
So we got to get you on there. But where can everybody find you and get your stuff?
you know, the landing page is natashaowensmusic.com, natashaowensmusic.com. I'm on, you can just Google my name, but I'm on anywhere you buy music. But my website is a good landing page for merch, for tour schedule, for, you know, seeing what product I have out there, what music I have out there, and how to get to all my social medias. So natashaowensmusic.com.
Okay. Upcoming tour?
Yes, I'm in the middle of an America 250 tour. It's the 250 anniversary of America. And so we're hitting just about every state. And outside of that, I am doing things from festivals in the summertime. I'll be in Nashville on June the 27th. I think it's the Tennessee GOP is having an America 250 tour, and I'm headlining that. I'm singing in San Diego on the USS Midway, which is going to be really cool, June 6th. So I have from women's conferences to prayer breakfasts to tours to America 250. It's just a combination of all kinds of stuff. It's been a very busy year and a cool year to celebrate how amazing America is, even 250 years, something that nobody else has achieved.
Are you do you ever come north of the border for Christian stuff or
Oh,
any
yeah.
music and stuff?
Like north of the border of what, Texas?
No. Do you ever come to Canada?
Yeah, I have come to Canada. Back
Okay.
in the Christian week, we did a tour through Maine and then went up to Canada on that
Oh,
side.
nice.
But I don't get to Canada very often.
No.
And, you know, I get to Mexico every once in a while. So, I mean, I get beyond the U.S. borders for different things. But I would love to come to Canada. I think y'all need Jesus up there, too, just like we need it
Oh,
down here.
absolutely.
And
Yeah,
we're gonna
keep
get
us
you in
warm.
Australia. Got to get you to Australia too.
Oh, I
Yeah.
would love. I met one of the CPAC representatives from Australia, and I'm supposed to be getting to Australia within the next year. We'll see if that happens.
Well, I'll put in the word to the radio station manager there that they have rock and roll country. In fact, we're on their country station right now, live.
Amazing, amazing. Well, I have a country song they could play on country radio. There, it'd be great. It's called "Give Me a Cowboy."
All right.
Nice.
Now, do you play if you play it backwards? Do you get your trailer back? Do you get? My dad used to make that joke. Sorry.
Yes,
My dad was a disc jockey for country
that's
west
funny.
his entire
That's
career.
funny. Yes,
Natasha-
you get your tears back from being bottled. You get your woman back. Your dog doesn't die. Yeah, all that.
The greatest country and western music ever written. I love that. So, Natasha, have a great night. I hope to see you back soon. Good luck on everything.
I love that. Thank you so
Tell
much.
President Trump we are pulling for him if you get a chance to
I
speak
will.
to him. We may not get a whole lot of ratings and reviews, but we're trying. So, have a great
Well, I pray
night.
blessings upon your show and your ministry, and just pray that God opens up doors that you never thought would open.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Welcome.
Have a great night, and thank you for
Thank
taking
you.
time to be with us.
No problem. Anytime.
All right.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
You know, we say it every week.
Yeah, goes by like
It goes
it's
by.
because
so
we're having fun.
Yes, that's true. We are having fun. So I got to push a button here on the radio. I want to thank everybody for tuning in, WRFN, WZQR. Stay tuned for hour 2. We have a great guest coming up. And I pushed a button.
Broadcasting across Australia on Dare Media Group radio stations, this is the Sportcat Show, uncovering secret chapters, strange encounters,
and the occasional technical mishap.
Yeah, we're not going to talk about the technicals. Hello, everybody, and welcome to hour 2 of the Sportcat Show. As always, we have 2 guests tonight. This guest, well, he is a very talented person as far as author, and he's talented in the courtroom as well. He has all kinds of great stories to tell us, and he's just got a book coming out he wants to tell us about. Mark, come on out here. Let me push a button there. Oh, there we are. Hey, Mark. Hello. How are you, sir?
Good. How are y'all?
Doing good.
Pretty-
Doing good.
Pretty darn spiffy up here.
She's in Canada. Overlook her, eh? So, Mark, you scared me to death this morning when I got your email. You're like, no, it's wrong. I was like, no, why didn't you? What happened?
I plead insanity on that. I did a show with someone with a similar name to yours, and I'm thinking, well, I already did the show, and then I realized, oh no, I haven't. That was somebody else. So anyway, my apologies.
No, you're good. You freaked me out. I was like, oh no, at last minute.
I know. Yeah, he was asking, it's like, I'm like, I don't know. Don't think so. I haven't been here that long though.
Mark, tell us a little bit about yourself and your book you got. Well, you've got several books, but the newest one.
Well, yeah. So I am. This is my 3rd novel. It's called Boy with Wings. I have the cover is right here, and it's a story of a boy with wings. He's this boy that's born with these strange things on his back, and he ends up in a freak show traveling the South in the U.S. in the 1930s. And the book, sort of touches on issues of race and religion, but more than anything about what it means to be different. And so the book's done very well. It's been out for a little while now, and so I'm happy to get it out there. As I said, this is the 3rd novel I've written. My first book was a book that was published a while ago now, that I had no idea what I was doing when I wrote it. And so I was very fortunate to get that book published. But it was called The Return, and it was a story of a Black woman who claimed to be Jesus, and this reporter that followed her around. And so, and then the second book was, that book was, the title is The Gendarme, and it's the story. My heritage is Armenian way back, so we've always been told. And so that story is based in the Armenian genocide, which, it did very well. It got published in 10 languages, and I got invited to speak in Armenia and in Italy. And the number one reaction I got to that book for people was like, we had no idea this stuff ever happened. So it was interesting from a historical standpoint to just sort of get this is what happened, get the word out. So anyway, long answer to your question, but you'll have to cut me off, guys, because I can ramble on there. So
No, we don't do that. It's funny you say that though, because a lot of times history has a way of either rewriting itself or just being
Repeating.
forgotten. And it's funny you say that because so many people just say, "Oh, well, I didn't know that happened." And I've said on this show, I'll detour real quick, but I graduated in '85. We didn't learn anything about the Vietnam-Korean conflict in school. Nothing.
right.
We come out of it and knew nothing about it. And now as an adult, I'm like, well, that was kind of important. So, so
No, I thought at one time about trying to get a master's in history because I was sort of like you. I mean, and when I went to high school, they had this thing called the CLEP test, and you could get out of taking classes in high school, and and college, and so I really didn't have any history classes from like junior year of high school on. So after I was a lawyer and I was moved back to Tallahassee where I live, I decided I would take some night classes in history that they offered at the university here. And so they were fantastic. I mean, the instructors were really great. And there was a whole series on the French Revolution, Napoleon and stuff I didn't know really much about. And then a whole separate series on the Civil War and the U.S. presidents and, just fascinating stuff. So I was glad I was exposed to it. The masters went away when we started having children, and that occupied the entirety of my life from that point, or most of it. So, but anyway, I was glad I got the opportunity to do it.
Have had to doing that.
Yeah, they do kind of get in the way, don't they?
Well, they take up a lot of your time.
So when you're writing, what part of you feels most authentic? When the lawyer part of you, the city commissioner, festival founder, novelist, what part of you feels more authentic? Like, what is you?
Well, I don't know. So I try and, as a writer, I mean, first, being a lawyer and a fiction writer, there's some advantages and some disadvantages. So one of the advantages is, I mean, you're trained to see the side, every story, everybody has an argument, everybody has a story and a side. So you're trained that to, sort of listen and try and understand where are they coming from? And so that's very helpful. But when some of the writing I had to sort of, when the Gendarme was published, we went through rounds and rounds of edits. That was with Putnam, one of the big 5 publishers. And so the editor finally said to me, she said, I've experienced this before with lawyers who are writers. So something was bugging me about this. And she said, you use too many semicolons. And I said, well, that's the way I write. And she said, no, get rid of them. And so we had this back and forth to where at the end I was pulling books off my shelves and counting the number of semicolons in the first chapter and saying, I'm in the lowest quartile now. But that was, so there's some, being a lawyer again is, you're trained to write a certain way. And you have to sort of untrain yourself from that. But in writing, I've never been an actor, so I don't know really anything about that. But what I know of method acting, is where you really try and get in the head of the character. And that's what I try and do. And so I find myself, and I know, some authors will create whole charts of everything about that character's life. And so they just feel like they know them inside and out. And I don't do that, but I really try and think about, what would I do if I'm this character? Would I do this? Would I do that? How would I feel? What would I say? And so that's sort of the way I try and go at it. And I haven't, and this started from the very first. So when I first started The Return, the very first book, my kids were young. I mean, the only time I could write was very early in the morning, because as soon as, I'd write for 30 or 45 minutes or an hour, and then it's on to the chaos of the day. And by nighttime, I'm so exhausted, I can't do anything. But I sort of, that's the way I started. I've kept that up. I try and do a little bit every day still. I wrote this morning. I write, try and write for an hour a day, and it keeps my head in it. And it helps in this whole thing in terms of kind of thinking through from the point of view of the character.
Do you find that when you're not writing, you're thinking about writing?
Yes. And I'm particularly doing it this way. Like if I get out of the, like if I'm traveling or something, and so for whatever reason, I'm not writing, which isn't very often, but my head gets out of the whole story. And then I have to it takes me a while to get back into the flow. But if I do a little every day, then I'm sort of thinking about it all day long. And so I have little, notepads in the car, at my office, everywhere that, she might do this, or what about that, and so it helps me in that regard.
So do you do, oh, sorry, go ahead, Glenn.
No. I would go ahead. No, I didn't have a question. Let me read some of these real quick in the comments. CB says, how would Wingman deal with the freak show ban in the USA? And then he followed it up with, what does Wingman look like?
Well, so let me take I'll take the first question first. So when I did the research for Boy with Wings, and I read a lot of books. There's a sort of a seminal movie called Freaks. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of this. It was I think 1932 or so, and so it was a story of like these human oddities that were part of this sideshow that sort of took over the sideshow because the guy running it was not a good person, and became a very famous movie. And so, and in addition to that, in Florida, where I live, that was the place circuses and sideshows, went for the winter to sort of, spend the winter, regroup. And there's even communities, and people retired in Florida, communities where sort of sideshow people retired. And there was one place called Gibtown, is what it's known as. And this, there had the giant ran the diner and this sort of thing. People just, sort of had regular lives. And there's a documentary on that, and an American Sideshow Museum down in the Tampa area. And so I tried to find, I wanted to find a current sideshow performer I could interview, about the book. And it was hard for exactly the reason your caller asked, because you really, sideshows are sort of, displaying human oddities just for the display are sort of frowned upon, if not illegal at this point. And so I had written the manuscript. It was pretty much, done. And then I see, of all things, a sideshow is coming to Tallahassee, where I live. So I'm thinking, wonderful. So I sign up for the VIP experience, and where I get to meet the performers, and I go, and then I see they canceled it. They're like, oh my God. So, and then a few months later, it's rescheduled at another venue. So I sign up again, VIP experience. I get down there, and the guy goes, oh, you're not here for that sideshow, are you? So yeah, they've canceled that. But I managed to get some, sort of contact information for the people that were putting on the sideshow. And there was one performer in particular that had a website and a way to contact him. And so eventually he and I made contact. His stage name is Short E Dangerously. And he's a half man. His body ends at really before his rib cage ends. And so he gets around on his hands or on a skateboard, and his picture on his website is him with a mask on, breathing fire. And so when we made contact, at this point, my book has been published or was getting ready to be published. I said, well, hey, Shorty, would you consider appearing with me at a couple of bookstore events? And I'd like to just interview you about your life. What is it like when you walk into a room and everybody looks at you because you're different than everybody else is? And so he said, okay. And we did it. We did it twice, once in Miami and once in Savannah. And he, when I asked him to do this, he said, well, do you want me to perform? And I'm like, well, what kind of performance? And he said, well, I can do push-ups. And he goes, if that gets the crowd going, I'll do a handstand. And if I really want to blow the roof off, I'll do a one-armed handstand. I'm like, oh my goodness. And then he says, the game with the cups and the ball, where you put a ball under one cup, you have to guess what cup it is. He said, I do a version of that where I put a spike under one cup and I slam my hand down on the cups that don't have the spike. And he said, if you Google magic tricks gone wrong, this is the first thing that comes up. And so we ended up doing this in Miami, and my daughter moved the cups around, and he did not injure himself. but I really I enjoyed meeting Short. He's a very interesting guy. And he said, I don't want to be, I'm not an inspiration. I'm just a guy. I'm a survivor. And he had toured the world as part of his sideshows for 20, 30 years, and then got really sick and said he just couldn't do that life, it's constant travel anymore. And so for the last 10 years or so, he's been a DJ at a strip club in Daytona. And so my wife and I had dinner with him in Miami. And after we were done, he said, well, can we stay a little longer? He said, this is the most normal conversation I've had in a long time. But I really, I just thought he was, a very cool guy. He's he's from Michigan originally, and sort of a blue collar guy, and just, hey, this is what I do, and this is what life gave me, and I went with it. And in response to my question, well, what is it like for you? You go in Walmart and everybody's looking. And he says, well, it sort of depends on what kind of day I'm having. So, so if it's a good day, I'm kind of, yeah, whatever. And if it's not a good day, people will say something to me like, oh, it's so good to see you today. I said, well, why me? I'm no different than anybody else. So I was very glad I got the opportunity to do that. And he paid me a great compliment. And he said, well, how did you do your research for the book? And I told him, same thing I mentioned. I watched all these movies, read all these books, and I read this one particular book. It was a memoir of Ward Hall, King of the Sideshow. And Shorty said, I knew it. I was in Ward Hall's show for 2 years. And so it was very nice. If you write historical fiction, it's very nice for somebody to tell you, well, yeah, you got that, you got it right in terms of how this worked out. But in terms of the other question, and again, a very long answer to the first part of that. I mean, I tried to, describe the boy with wings as sort of, first he's a boy at first. So this is not full formed wings. This is just sort of these weird things on his back that people are like, what is that? And as he grows older, it becomes clearer that they are more wings and by the end of the book, I mean, he's capable of at some level of flight with the wings. So it's sort of I don't know that I had you see all sorts of depictions of angels and others. And I, for whatever reason, after I wrote the book, I'm like in the airport in London, and they've got this, where you can stand in front of this picture of wings and get your picture made. Like, what, I got my picture made, but this wasn't exactly how I envisioned this with the boy. So anyway, it was just, I think I sort of wanted to leave it a little bit to your imagination as the reader. So, what do you, rather than, oh, well, this is a certain way, although I tried to describe them as more muscular and, and sort of, looked sort of human in a way as well, if that makes sense.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So what is the metaphor behind the wings?
Well, it's so I mentioned the book has, some religious, elements to it. Because, I mean, a boy with wings, I mean, you thought was this an angel? Is this a devil? I mean, what is this? And at the beginning of the book, sort of the way he ends up in the freak show is that, this is 1920s in rural Florida, and his, he's in this rural community, and there's some sickness and some other children die, and word has gotten out about him having this weird back, and so he's blamed for this, and people want to burn him out basically, and his mother concocts this sort of crazy scheme with the circus people she knows to bury him alive, but with a sort of a fake burial alive. And so the beginning of the book is him in this coffin as a boy of 7 years old. And so it's people have told me, so well, that's like my worst nightmare. But I wanted it to be sort of that you got immediately into this boy as sort of he's different, and he's being, if not persecuted, I mean, treated differently just because of the way he is.
Ostracized, yeah.
Because your books deal with a lot of like your characters are outsiders, they're wrestling with identity. Is that how are you writing from an area of that, or is that something that you just sort of envision your characters being?
Well, some of both. I mean, people have asked me with it legitimately. They said, "Well, Mark, let me get this straight. Okay, so here you are, a white male born in this country in this day and age, to parents who loved you and paid for your education. What do you know about being different?" Which is, yeah, a fair question. And I said, "Well, I've tried to touch the point that everybody knows at some level, sometime, somewhere, of being sort of on the outside looking in." And I certainly had that in my life. I remember for me, it was middle school where I was, I'm the oldest of three. I didn't have an older brother or sister to show me the ropes. My mother bought my clothes. I remember being sort of ostracized as a nerd. I was a nerd, and so that, I mean, just that feeling of being sort of ridiculed and being, shunted aside, that was that I wanted to tap into that. So the reader can say if I did or didn't, but that's where some of that came from.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
As a paramedic, I've been in some pretty low places, some high places, and I've had people say the similar thing to me, and I've always turned it back. Well, tell me what it's like so I know. And then I had a ambulance driver. I'll just leave it at that. We went on a call, and he told this young lady, he said, "Look, you've got cars out here. You can go to the hospital." He says, "If I take you, it's going to be a $1,500 bill that nobody's going to pay for. That's going to show up on your credit. And in one day, you're going to want to go get a credit card, or you're going to want to get a mortgage or whatever." He goes, "You're starting at a disadvantage already." And the way he just outlined it to them, and of course he was a person of color, so he made it much more elaborate than that. I was like, that just clicked. You're starting at a disadvantage if you make a silly decision, but then you've already got a disadvantage because you're already different. So it really resonated with me.
Well, I know, and the whole racial thing. I mean, again, if you live in the South like I do, I mean, race is a part of life, and it has been my entire life. And so, in the first book, is about this woman who claimed to be Christ returned, and she's a black woman, and so and I mentioned, I had this naive assumption I could just sit down and write a book and somebody would want it, and I later saw somebody referred to that as the equivalent of waking up one morning and saying, "I think I'll go practice thoracic surgery today." And so I was very fortunate to get the book published, and I look back on it now, and I had cause a couple of years ago to read parts of it, and parts I was thinking, "Well, this is pretty good," and then parts I'm going, hopefully I've gotten better since then. But I think the concept was a great one in terms of, well, how would you know? And I can easily see some people that would be totally bought in, yes, 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 and others like, "No way, this is not my Jesus." And so I just thought it was interesting, that if you're a Christian, I mean, Jesus wasn't exactly what people were expecting the first time. So would you expect the return to be exactly the same also? So anyway, it's a very interesting, sort of setup in that regard. And boy, with Rings, race plays a part also. I mean, when Johnny, the boy, gets out of the coffin and escapes all that, his mother passes away, and he ends up in this turpentine camp in North Florida in the 1920s that is all black people. And so he's sort of taken in by them, and sort of almost feels like he's one of them until eventually he's pulled away. And and then later in the book, when he's on the freak show, there's the whole issue of, well, could black people even go to the show? And eventually in my story, the owners get so desperate for money, we'll take anybody here. If you got money, come on. And so there's that whole, element too. So I just thought it was sort of interesting just to, and if you're a writer, I mean, I'm trying to write from the point of view of this boy and also other characters, and to write from the point of view of a black character. Well, how would you feel? Do you feel like you walk in a room and everybody's looking at you, sort of thing? So there's a lot of resonance in that part of it as well.
Interesting.
And the loneliness, right? The topic of loneliness kind of comes up as well.
Yeah, it does, and I, as part of the research into human oddities, and the whole sort of fascination people have had for centuries about this. I mean, there's a whole history of how different cultures treated human oddities, and the Romans, being the Romans, they had games with them and this sort of thing. The Greeks really treated them poorly and tried to hide them, and that and so it's varied over time. And the heyday of sideshows and that sort of thing is probably end of the 19th century, start of the 20th century. And in the U.S., that was P.T. Barnum, that was the Ringling Brothers Circus, and Coney Island, and all that was sort of early 20th century. And by the time of my book, it was sort of starting to, now that sort of things are going out on the road and to the hinterlands, where people have never seen anything like this. And so, and part of the research, I run into this book, and it's titled Freaks also. And it was sort of this, I don't know, cultural critic, psychologist, analysis of why are people fascinated by this. And it was interesting. He had a couple of things, I never thought about it. For instance, he said, when you're an infant and you're a child, I mean, everybody's a giant, everybody's way bigger than you are. And I really thought of it like that. And then he had all this psychosexual stuff that I'm kind of like, I'm not quite so sure about all that. But it's it is, it continued on even to today. I think people are, they're sort of intrigued by people that are different to extent, and then shun them as well. So there's this weird push-pull thing that I think you still see today.
Agreed. Let's catch up in the chat real quick here. Let's see. CB, well, he's got a bunch of them here. Does the boy with wings fall in love with anyone, where they're both performers from the same show? Let's see. Do any of your characters cross paths? And what year was Jesus Woman, and how did she evade the KKK? So, good Lord.
CB, you got to read the book, man.
Yeah.
So in Boy with Wings, he does, he ends up having a relationship with a young woman who's on the show, and in the freak show. And so in the book, the freak show is run by a dwarf woman who's called Tiny Tot. And she has a daughter who's a sort of a normal sized daughter who's part of, is along with her on the show. And so she and Johnny are about the same age, and they become an item. And I tried to, because again, in the research, I, stumbled upon this, that there is sort of a rivalry and even a jealousy among performers on these type of shows between the performers. I mean, the guy who are out working every day, breathing fire, swallowing swords, that sort of stuff, 10, 15 times a day. And the human oddity who comes out at the end, shows themselves once and gets, extra bucks because they're so different. And so there's sort of a, on both sides of this. I mean, Johnny, he wants to be the same. He wants to fit in with everybody else and can't. And Winifred, who is the girl, well, she feels like he's special and I'm not. I'm just playing here, And so there's this, little bit of, that's sort of a factor in their relationship. So, but they do cross paths. I mean, CB, you got to read the book, but on the first book, so no, the timing of that was, that book was published in 2000. So it was sort of an end of the 20th century book. So KKK was probably still around some, but it wasn't sort of the same time period that this Boy with Wings is.
Do you ever explore the other side of it from like the perspective of the audience viewing these individuals?
Yeah, and so the book is structured in sort of a unique way, and I had people try and talk me out of this, and I tried it in different ways, and eventually went back to the way I had it. So Johnny's part of the book, Johnny's the boy with wings, is from a close third person point of view, and I did it that way intentionally. And then other characters, including other performers and Winifred and this sort of thing, that's first person, because I wanted you, the reader, to sort of learn about Johnny a lot from what these other people think about him. And they all, have different thoughts about him. Some project what they want him to be, onto him. But I did it that way because if Johnny, there is sort of this religious, thing. And if you're a Christian or whatever, there's always a little distance between you and Christ or you and God. And so there's that's just part of the deal from my standpoint. And so I did it that way intentionally. But yeah, I wanted, others who, one of the characters who Johnny interacts with several times is a boy who was part of the Turpentine camp. And then he comes to see the show later on when Johnny's famous at this point. And so their reaction, from, over that period of time as well.
Go ahead, Jen. I know you had Jen is my author, by the way, and she writes a list of questions.
Well, yeah, I thought Jen was. I watched a little of the Natasha interview, and so I think I picked up that you're an author as well. So you know the loneliness and rejection as part of this. I'll tell a story really quick about that if it's okay. So when the Gendarme was published, I won the Florida Gold Book Award for fiction, which is very nice. Very happy to do that. And so we do this. I'm the founder of this book and music festival. We can talk about it a little bit also, called Word of South. That's in Tallahassee. We just finished our 12th festival a couple weeks ago. And so the Florida Book Awards, the organization, has their banquet right before our festival. And then we have some of the winners participating in the festival and panels and stuff. And so they asked me to give the keynote speech at their banquet. And the guy asked me like last year. And so, and he and I are friends on Facebook, and I'm all over Facebook about my book, which is being submitted for a Florida Book Award. So I'm thinking, well, Keith, I'm sure he knows I'm a candidate for the award here. And then so in my speech for the keynote speech, I said, so there's a small part of me that I'm not proud of, thought, well, maybe the fix is in, and I'm a winner here, And so I'd be like Sergeant Schultz on Hogan Heroes, like I know nothing, but I did not win, and so I the fix was not in. So I worked that into the speech, and the guy who did win is a writer named John Dufresne, who had written a book called My Darling Boy, which is very good. I read it, but and I'm not making this up. I mean, if not the first paragraph, the first page of his book, it has a character who's referencing winning the Florida Gold Book Award. So I'm like, so note to self: work in Florida Gold Book Award in next book. So, but anyway, it was so as a writer, and I told the group there, I said, well, there's so much, rejection in writing. You spend years of your life working on a book. It's like your child. You put it out there, and someone in the space of an hour or two or less says, meh, and so it's just, and you come to accept that. But I remember when I was trying to get The Return published, the very first book, and, trying to get an agent. And I, at that point, they had telephone books of like all the list of all the agents, and you sent these query letters out, or sort of cold call letters. And even though you gear yourself up for rejection, after about 25, you start to go, well, gee, maybe this just isn't that good. And so there were times, I mentioned this in the speech, that I thought, do I even deserve to call myself a writer? I couldn't get anything published. And so finally I got a little short story I'm sure this is no longer even in print. It was like, at the time, it was like a stapled together thing, but it was enough to sort of keep me going. So, well, yeah, I can do this. I can, I just have to persevere. And then I got the Gendarme published, and it all went on from there.
Like baby steps, and it's like, then you get to that next step, and then you get to a point where you look back and you're like, wow, look at all I did.
Well, I know, and it's just long odds, and I tell myself, God, I've defied really long odds several times here. I'm pleased that I've been able to, and I'm lucky that I've been able to do this. I was fortunate to be able to get the books published. My law firm, my partners have been generous to let me do this, and my family's been generous to let me do this. I feel very grateful.
Yes.
And I don't know about you. I never, a lot of people, know at age 12 they want to be a writer. And I didn't. I wanted to be a lawyer, and I am a lawyer. But I had, probably about, I don't know, I've been practicing law about 10 years. And I remember, my practice is sort of spread around Florida. So I spent a lot of time driving on I-75 and I-10 by myself. And I remember thinking, I said, after 10 years of being a lawyer, like, got to be more than this. And so I decided, well, I'm going to try and do several other things besides practicing law. So I'm going to try and teach. I'd like to maybe run for public office, and I'd like to try and write a book. And eventually I did all of them. And I taught for a couple of years at the community college here. And that was enough to cure me of wanting to do that. And then in a fit of insanity, I ran for the city commission and was elected. And so I served for 10 years, and I was glad I did it and glad it's over. And then I just sat down, I can write this book. And so that was the return. I started it, and it took me about, 5 years to get it done and published. But I was on.
Nice. Yeah, everybody's got their story from start to finish. I started writing at 12, and I always knew I wanted to be an author. I just never figured it would happen.
Yeah, well, so congratulations. I mean, it's it's fun for me, and I always, I don't know. I mean, I don't know if you write, I mean, some writers I know sit down and write like, 5 or 6 hours every day. And I couldn't, if I did that, it wouldn't be fun. And so I don't, I like the way I do it. I want to do it an hour, maybe if I could do 2, that would be nice. But I mean, that's all I want to do, and do other stuff as well.
I have I hyper focus, so I tend to sit down and I'll write and I'll forget the world exists, and I'll have to set an alarm for myself because I'll sit down and write for like 8 hours straight
Oh,
and
wow.
forget the world exists. But that's part of my autism and ADHD. It's like my hyper focus. It's my hobby turned passion turned obsession turned now writing is just cheaper than therapy.
Well, but that's very cool, though. I mean, I know what you mean. I mean, I don't do it for 8 hours, but I can, I can get in a zone, and it's so fun when you're in the zone and it's just flowing. And the
Yes.
ideas are coming, the writing's coming, and I'm just going, because not all days are like that. And I have some days where I said, just get a paragraph down, just get a few
Mhm.
sentences down, because the hardest thing for me to do is get the first words on the page. And after that,
Mhm.
I can edit it, and that it's easier. But just getting it down to begin with is the hardest thing.
Yeah. Yeah, those blank pages are terrifying, aren't they?
Well, I just, it's like I'm working on a novel now that sort of has for 3 characters that are, the point of view is rotating among them. And so it's, in terms of getting in the head of them, I'll be in the head of one, and then we're moving on to the other one. So I got to reorient. All right, we're back to their story now. And so it's, when I'm done with it, I want to go back and read just each character's the whole way through and make sure it makes
Mhm.
sense and I'm getting the voice right and that sort of thing. So it can be, it's a hard way to do it, but I think it's going to work out well. We'll see.
How much do you plan, or are you more of a pantser?
I'm somewhere in the middle of that. The times I've tried to over plan it, it hasn't worked out well. And so, but I know a lot of authors. I've interviewed some that just say, "Oh, wherever the characters want to go." Well, I mean,
Yeah.
I have an idea where they're going to end up. I mean, how they get there is a little bit, but I just, I think it's so important in a book to be able to stick the ending, and so I want to have a feel for sort of how it's going to end, pretty early on in the process. So I don't. Are you that way, or how do
Oh,
you?
I started out, well, I was very much a pantser. I knew where to start, where to end, somewhere in the middle to shift it there.
Right.
Um, and then the rest would just fill itself in. And a lot of times, and I don't know if you've experienced this, I'll start writing, I'm in the zone, I don't know what's going to happen, and oh, I didn't know that was going to happen, and I just sort of
Right.
follow the imagination train, and I'll either go somewhere where I'm like, wow, that's amazing, that came out of my head, or I'm questioning my sanity.
No, I know exactly what you mean, and but so that's sort of similar to me also. I mean, I start and I've changed the endings. I changed it on Boy with Wings. I mean, not a ton, but still, I think it was better. I changed the Gendarme ending a little bit too. So I think that I think that's as you get into it, other things come to you,
Yeah.
and it's sort of like, well, this is you'd really do this instead of that. So.
Yeah, yeah. And then as you go, do you find that your writing evolves and changes, and then you're like, oh, I wish I'd done that in that book there.
Yeah, yeah, it does. Or I'll think like I don't want to be too much like one book to another, and so I'm
Mhm.
probably this is probably not the best career advice for writers because I to sell books so you need to have a series or you need to do the same oh you're a historical fiction or whatever. I got to write what I want to write. I just can't, and so
Yeah.
it goes in different directions, and it just is what it is. Because I mean, you spend so much time with this. I mean, it really is, an obsession. And
Yes.
I just can't force myself to do something if it's not I'm not obsessed about. So,
So what genres what genres can you just not write? You don't feel it.
well, I don't. I mean, romance is probably not my, that's probably not my genre. But the interesting thing about Boy with Wings is it kind of covers several genres, and I've won awards in different genres, which is sort of nice. I mean, I had, it's historical fiction. I mean, it's based in the 20s and 30s. I've done a lot of research about that. It's literary. I've won some literary awards. It's really, I mean, there's a Christian part of this book, and I haven't been able to reach that audience the way I hoped I would. But still, I think I mean, and I've won some awards for for religious fiction. So I hate to be pigeonholed too much into oh you're this you just write in this genre so I don't know. What about you? I mean, do you feel like you can do you feel compelled to try and do different stuff or
I like to combine genres. I mean, there's elements that cross those genre borders, but yeah, like you about I don't write I find it hard to write history myself. And I don't write spicy romance. I mean, there's elements of romance because it's part of our lives, but yeah, I don't focus on the bedroom scenes that we don't need to have in
right?
every book.
Well, I'll tell you just quickly. So yeah, publishers and others have told me for years, oh, you need to have a blog. And I've said, well, I'm not witty enough to have a blog. I don't have time to write a blog. I now have a blog. And so the first post, which was a year and a half ago now, writing advice. Because I'm like you, a lot of people will ask me, I mean, I can't tell you how many times, well, I've got 6 chapters of a novel done. I'm like, well, finish it.
Good. Yeah.
But what the other advice on that is to read and read a lot. I mean,
Yeah.
right. And once you do it, it becomes a little bit second nature in terms of what works, what doesn't, what's good writing, what's not good writing. And so I
Yeah.
really try. I have a goal to read a certain amount of books a year, and I usually do it.
Yeah.
But then I had this one thing I said, unless you're really, really good, and even then think don't write about sex because there's a reason there's a bad sex in fiction award, and I'm not making that up. But so Glenn, I feel like we're doing all the talking.
No, I love it because she comes up with different points of views than I do on most things, and I love the author approach with her. One of the questions I had was, so you've kind of jumped around in your books. You live in Florida. Are any of your themes going to be beach, tropical, sailing, anything like that in the near future, or?
Nah, probably not. So the part of Florida I live in is much more like South Georgia than it is Miami Beach. So we're like 30 miles from the Georgia line. So this is much more deep south, really, where I mean, it's a little bit of its own weird thing because the beach is not far from here, and the beach that's near here is sort of a less of a white sands beach, but more of a entry to the Gulf if you've got a boat and you like to fish and that sort of thing. So it's a but no, I don't. I'm steering further afield on the next book. The book I'm hoping to have published next has nothing to do with Florida, but I'm a little superstitious about talking about it because as soon as I do, people say, "Well, what happened to the Revolutionary War novel?" So, well, it didn't get published, So, um, but I wanted to talk just briefly about the festival, if I could, because this is I'm proud of this. So we had when the Gendarme was published, I got invited to speak at a number of literary festivals around the country, and I'd never been to one. And I thought this was really cool. I mean, all these people that are into books, they're free. I went to the Southern Festival of Book in Nashville, the South Carolina Literary Festival, the LA Times Literary Festival, and so I was on the city commission then, and I said, well, I'd like to try and do this in Tallahassee, but I said, I kind of need to get off the commission because it's just too much effort and conflict and all this. And so I did. I didn't run again in 2012, and so I got some folks together, and we decided, well, we're going to give this a go. But we decided, well, rather than being just the Tallahassee version of the South Carolina Literary Festival, why don't we see about doing something different? And we talked about where you can combine books and different things. I mean, books in the environment, books in art, books in politics. But sort of the easiest thing to do seemed to do books and music. And so we started out to do that. And we had the first festival in 2015, and we had this awesome lineup of authors and musicians, and it's in this new public park here in Tallahassee. It's really nice, and it rained all weekend long. And so stuff got canceled, moved around. It was, really famous people got, canceled, or, Ann Patchett was here, and we had almost no indoor space. And what we did have was this very small room that you could fit, we were supposed to have maybe 30 people in, where 80 people crammed in there to see Anne. And it was so humid. Her hair is she looked like Bride of Frankenstein. Her hair's like throwing up like this. But she was a trooper, and it was all great. And we just figured, we kind of have something here. And so we managed to keep it going for the next year will be year 13. And there's nothing exactly like this in the country or anywhere that I know of. And we have authors and musicians, and we combine them in different ways and do different stuff. And so what's been fun to me, several things. One is we've been able to do stuff you just can't see anywhere else. Like, for instance, a couple of years ago, we had the historian John Meacham, and paired with this African-American phenom guitarist named Yasmin Williams. And I had asked them, hey, would you guys consider doing this? And they're like, oh, yeah, okay. We had one Zoom meeting for like 10 minutes. And then 10 minutes before the show, they get together and like, well, yeah, we can do this, you can do that. And then they go out and just knock it out. And I remember going up to them afterwards and saying, I thought that would work. And they were like, yeah, can we do this again somewhere? And so but we did a tribute to Nat and Cannibal Adderley, who are from Tallahassee, and their families came. We had saxophone players from all over the world. And we had a tribute to Muscle Shoals music, and they came and did some of the session musicians. So it was a lot of fun. It's exposed me to music that otherwise I would never have been exposed to. And then we have really cool authors, and a lot of times we'll ask them, so, well, hey, is there a musician you'd like to appear with? And so sometimes they have like Joe Hill, who was Stephen King's son, was here a few years ago. And yeah, he had a musician friend. He wanted to join him. And then sometimes we'll just put people together like John and Yasmin, and it almost always works out great. And so we're looking forward to next year. You guys got to come down. It'll be the second weekend in April next year, 27.
Okay. Have Jen down with her book.
Yeah.
CD says, do you plan on a movie adaptation?
Well, I'd love for there to be one, but thus far there hasn't. So, and I mean, you guys probably know. I mean, even if your book is optioned for a movie, which has never happened to me, it doesn't happen often. But even if it is, the chances of it actually being made into a movie are like 1 in 200 or something like this. I mean, it's very, I mean, this doesn't happen often. So I've always, and I've been told my books, like the Gendarme, said, oh, there's too many crowd scenes. It'd be too expensive. I was like, well, what about, artificial intelligence? Now you can create crowd scenes. So anyway, I live in hope that will happen, but thus far it is not.
Well, one thing we always ask our guests is, and I qualified you for this one, is if you had any paranormal experience, if you believe in the paranormal. Aliens is a hot topic anymore, it seems.
Well, yeah, I mean, I've had, like everybody, I have, I don't know if they're paranormal experiences, but I was thinking about this the other day, just, incidences in my life where I've been this close from losing my life. I've been, for each of my children, I can think of a time where, I mean, if things had switched, in a matter of seconds, one way or the other, they would have lost their lives. And so it's sort of, I mean, you can chart that to providence. I tend to. I think, somebody was looking out, there. Or, is that paranormal? I don't know the answer to that. But it's enough for me to stop and think about, I mean, that all of this could have been so different so easily. And it ended up the way it was. So I heard Natasha's, story about the phone and all that. I haven't had that exactly, but my wife, so her family's from the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, and they've had several up there with the house that they said they saw, people in it that, the house was empty. So I'm open-minded in that regard, but that's my answer on that one.
That's fair. I mean, everybody has to have their own opinion. I mean, I didn't believe in Bigfoot till I saw something that I thought was Bigfoot. So I mean, it's like,
There you go.
I don't know that I could not believe now. So now that doesn't mean I want an alien knocking on my door.
Maybe you have, and you just don't know.
Say no to the probing, but no.
Well, part just before we leave that part of it, I mean, so in Boy with Wings, I mean, there's some, magical realism here. I mean, the boy has wings, I mean, he can fly at some level. And, going back to the return and the whole issue of, Christ's return, I mean, how would you know, and how much, did all that depend on miracles? I mean, you're turning water into wine, walking on the water. I mean, if that hadn't happened, would people have believed? I mean, so the whole, alien, paranormal stuff, I mean, it's all wrapped together in that, at least in my mind. And that's sort of the way I've, come at it in these books.
No, I believe that.
I like that.
Yeah. I don't want to keep you all night. Thank you for coming on. We are live in Australia, so I want to make sure you tell everybody, especially in Australia, tell everybody where they can find your stuff, where they can buy it. And of course, if you got anything coming up, like the festival, you're going to have to come back before the next week, or not next week, next year, to remind us. But anything else you got going on?
Well, so you can find my books at my website, which is just my name, markmustian.com. It's Mustian. And the festival is, again, it's called Word of South, like a play on word of mouth. So it's wordofsouthfestival.com. And we just had the structure of the festival is it's a ticketed show in the amphitheater here Friday night. This past one was Earth, Wind, and Fire. And then it's free stuff all weekend. There's like 50 different acts on 8 different stages. We had George Clinton. We had this guy called Shaun of the South, who's a real big deal. We had the Yonder Mountain String Band was the band Saturday night. So it's just a lot of fun. I mean, and again, it's free all weekend except for the one ticketed show Friday night. And we've been fortunate. I've learned more about putting on ticketed shows than I ever wanted to know. but we've been fortunate to get, I mean, we had the Avett brothers, we had Jason Isbell, we had Flaming Lips. We had last year was Violent Femmes with the Symphony here. So it's all been, it's all pretty unique stuff. But anyway, that's how to find me and get a hold of me. I've got some appearances for the book coming this summer in Florida. They're on the website. And thanks for having me on the podcast. This has been a lot of fun. I hope I haven't talked too much.
No, you did great.
It's about you. That's what everybody comes on the show. Oh, so nervous on this. It's about you. People want to know your story, and that's one thing I like. I think everybody's got a story, whether they're an author, an actor, an athlete. I mean, somebody that's an athlete, ESPN's not going to ask them if you've ever seen a Bigfoot. So there's got to be us weirdos out there somewhere. But yes, I want you to come back and remind us of the show in April. You'll have to remind me because my memory's horrible. And that's the way you said that you'd been on my show. I'm like, Jesus Christ, am I losing it?
No,
I'm the wrong person.
My memory's probably worse than yours, Glenn. I've learned I have to, I learned not to trust my memory a lot. So
Google Calendar. Google Calendar is
exactly
the way through life. But Mark, I've really enjoyed you coming on here and telling us about this, and I hope that some people check out your stuff, and especially in Australia, we're kind of like the afternoon drive right now for them, so on talk radio, so that's kind of cool.
Very cool.
All right, Mark, well, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, thanks again, guys. I hope you have a great rest of the evening, and I'd be happy to come on again next spring, before the festival. Okay.
Deal.
Yeah,
and hopefully by then you'll have your next novel out.
Yeah. Well, at least maybe a contract. I'd take that.
Yeah. I don't know. You got to deal with lawyers. Oh, wait a minute. No. Sorry.
Yeah, that's right.
There you go.
Now you'll never come back. Mark, thank you so much. I appreciate your time.
All right. Thanks, guys.
All right. Bye-bye.
Take care.
I love it. Every week we get such great guests. I was sitting here while you and him were talking, and God, that's poor English. And I was thinking to myself, how do I find such great guests? And I mean, how I get some of them. And I have agents that refer people and stuff, but a lot of times I'll get on Facebook or I'll just get on a tangent, Appalachia or something. And I'll just go and I'll find people. We've been blessed with
we have
and I never thought in a million years, like I was telling Natasha, I've interviewed athletes, actors, musicians, not just somebody that plays in a band on Friday night. I've interviewed people that have performed headline and stuff, so I think it's kind of cool.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So,
and I mean, like you said, they have a story, and they're people too, So they want to, we want to hear their story, and they want to tell it.
And that's the one thing I like about the show. Like I said, I originally went with the paranormal guys because I wanted somebody to coax me into believing that it did exist or that it didn't. So we always had alternating views. And then I was like, but everybody's really got a story. And that to me is more interesting than, ghost story. It's like a true crime podcast. There are a dime a dozen on, the internet. So that's why I like everybody's true story. And everybody's got a story, and it just makes you, I don't know. It just makes me feel good when I hear stories that, especially like tonight, when they both have such positive messages. So
I know it's inspiring. I love hearing their stories, but I also like telling my story too. And it surprises people. And I like the fact that because I'm autistic, and there's a lot of people that out there have misconceptions about that, but that I've been able to do something with it and find my special interest. I have a lot of people coming back and saying, wow, that's really inspiring that you can do that. And it's inspiring to them. Like, it inspires them to do stuff too.
And while you're at it, where can they find you?
Yes. Sorry. Yeah, check out my website, www.jmshawauthor.com. You can see my books. You can see the links to my books. They're available on Amazon. And you can follow me on my Facebook and Instagram, which is found on the bottom. I also have a link to Goodreads so you can see what other people are saying about my books.
Cool. Very good. Everybody go check her out. Make sure to check out the music tonight from Natasha and then Mark's books. Y'all were talking about reading. I'll be reading forever with the amount of guests I have on here. So
my to be read list exploded since I started joining you.
And it's great. It really is.
Yes,
So,
yes. I can't complain.
Oh, no, I'm not complaining at all. Next week, we have a surprise. He's in the chat tonight. CB is going to be joining us next week. And Joe Vagat, I'm probably pronouncing it wrong, but is going to be joining us. So we have two great authors next week lined up. So we're looking forward to seeing you then. Of course, I will be back tomorrow on the Thin Line Rock Station, noon till 2, www.thethinlinerockstation.com. And then, of course, the Sportcat Daily Gazette, where I get on there and whine, bitch, moan, and groan about the stupid stuff. And Jen and I'll be back next week. And if I can coax her to come in on the daytime show again, she did great the other night. So
yeah, that was so much fun. I was laughing. And it's nice to laugh with other people, instead of just laughing on my own in the empty room with the internet going.
Sometimes our top is just I was surprised Chris didn't jump in there when we had a freak show win. So
yes, a couple times. That was like 2 in a row. You selected them well.
Yep, I didn't do that on purpose. Divine intervention. I don't know. Everybody have a great night. I'll see you tomorrow afternoon. And of course, we'll see you next week. Have a great night. And thank you for allowing us to tickle your ears on WRFN, WZQR, Air Talk Radio in Australia, and all points around the world.